And welcome back to part 20 of Final Fantasy 15. Today we'll be tackling the rest of the dungeon, getting the mithril, then getting on our way so we can actually get on that boat to Cape Kayam. And we're wrapping up chapter 7 because, yeah, we do finish chapter 7 at the end of this part. I did warn you, I've mentioned it several times before, but the moment you're focusing on the plot, you race through it. If you're focusing on all the side content as you go, you can stretch it out and make it quite big, but if you're just doing the plot, you'll be surprised how quickly it all just starts to come together. This part of the dungeon is a little annoying. I say it's annoying, it's more just draining because it's very repetitive. You're essentially going in a big circle, but with all the layouts of the rooms being the same, and you'll keep on doing that circle with enemies stopping you at every door until you reach the end. This ups your magic damage to talisman we just picked up, so that immediately goes on Iggy since he's the best with magic. After I compare a little. We haven't got too much more of No Gladio as well. Gladio will be coming back to us by the end of this part, slight spoilers. And to be fair, I've on the recording for me to get ready to do all the voice recording afterwards in post, the actual raw recordings I've got, I'm getting along. I'm getting quite a ways away through the plot now. I won't spoil where I am. Obviously, I won't go into detail or anything like that because I don't want to give it away for anyone who hasn't played the game and are just following through as we go. But I'm definitely quite far along it. I'm closest. I'm very close-ish to the end. I think it's the best way to put it. I'm close-ish. I always go through these side rooms first instead of just going through the tunnel. I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I just always do it. So don't. Yeah, that happens sometimes. If I'm playing other games and go to this, remembering that the touchpad or select or back, or depending on what you're playing on, is your actual inventory screen, and the start button or options and whatever, it just pauses the game the old-fashioned way. It's like sometimes I get them muddled up, and I expect the back button to be the old school menu, whilst the actual gear menu of everything I need, this, should be on options. Oh, I think this is, by the way, the time where I learned that I made a... I'm about to learn, yeah, because I make lightning instead of ice, when I should have made ice, because I didn't realise, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that the slimes drain electricity and fire. So if you're following along, don't do this, do it with ice instead if you're going to use magic, because they're weak to ice. They drain fire and electricity, so it's going to do diddle and squat to them. And they get quadcast as well, so they'll get hit by it 4 times. Look, they're getting healed by the fire. I know it happens. I know there's a point where I throw electric point blank at one of the slimes and then realise, oh wait, it says drain. But I just wasn't looking in the top left. It's just something that's there, apparently. That was an extremely generous parry it gave me there when I was animation locked, and it just gave it to me anyway. But I said, this dungeon, we did the more interesting half of the dungeon last part. This part is going to be the less interesting second half of the dungeon. The only real interesting thing being the boss near the end of it, and that's about it. Alright, calm down, Aranea. Because now we go through here, and it's another tunnel. 2 doors go up, more enemies, and I think this is our necromancer that we have here. And this is where I realised, oh, it heals electric. Oh, oops. So now I'm immediately like, oh fuck. So I immediately go and make ice. I forget what I put on it in the end. Because I try and refrain from using Xpericast a lot of the time. I think I either put Stopcast or Quadcast on it. Oh, I go for Quad in the end, okay. I was trying to work out, I was like, what do I go with in the end? And that's when I realised I can't put it on because I'm equipped on electric, so I try it again. But the electric's going to pass, so I can't do it again still. I've got to wait more time before it will let me do it. Which is a bit weird. If you're mid using a weapon, or an after effect of that weapon is still in play, you can't swap that weapon out. Which is just a bit... I can kind of get it for some weapons. So if it's a big heavy weapon, you don't want to then immediately swap it out whilst you're mid-swing. But some weapons like that have like an after effect. Like say there's a poison touch on it. If the enemy's poisoned, even if you're not using the weapon, you can't swap it out because it was caused by that weapon. And I get it's trying to be like a bit of a power control thing, but it just seems a bit odd. Seems like a weird choice. But then this is a game that, when you think about it, is actually kind of free with what you can do with weapons and whatnot. You have a lot of weapons at your disposal, and that's ignoring the royal arms, but all of them are very different. Even if one takes the shape of a greatsword and whatnot, they're still very different in their movesets and what they can do. And the fact that you can swap to 4 of them on the fly at any time is pretty damn cool. It's pretty impressive. Like I said, not a large amount of other action games can have that symbol of them, of hey, swap freely between a large bunch of weapons.
Gotta nip the danger in the bud. The Empire's no exception.
Yeah, right on. Couldn't have said it better myself.
You know, like, about a year ago, I'd never heard the term nip it in the bud, or nip in the bud. And then, like, I heard it in one game. I can't remember what game it was. And now I just hear it everywhere. Like, the worst part is that they must have played that line on my blind playthrough of Final Fantasy 15, but I just didn't, like, recognize it probably. I didn't just, like, acknowledge it. I didn't hear it. And as I heard it, I wish I could remember. I think it was either no, it wasn't Hyperdimension, because that was one of the games I heard it in, because I used that term a few too many times. I think it was one of the extra lines in Persona 4 Golden, actually. They said nip it in the bud, and I was like, what the fuck's that? And then suddenly I started hearing it everywhere. It's like, what? Okay. That always seems to happen. Do you have that too? It's like something you've never heard of before, you hear it once and then you realise it's kind of everywhere. You just didn't acknowledge it before, and now you do, and it's just literally everywhere. But now we're right at the very bottom of the dungeon where he's trying to get to, so of course we got a big nasty boss to fight. Right, the Quetzalcoatl is level 32, has 64,600 HP, has a strength stat of 4,840, vitality of 184, and spirit of 157. It can be parried quite easily, so make the most of it, because that is an effective weapon against it. It's partially weak to ice by 20%, so make the most of it, and is resistant to light, but not immune to it, but you have no access to light right now anyway. It also has a partial weakness to lance attacks, meaning your focus should be either ice or chasing it through the sky with a lance or like things along those lines, like a trident or any kind of lance weapon you might have. Alternatively, Aranea can be quite a helpful tool with this fight with you because of her invulnerability of never being able to truly go down. You can spam a lot of her actions with High Wind and whatnot to build it up to make the most of this fight pretty quickly. This fight isn't too hard, it's closer to a mini-boss than an actual boss, but it is a mandatory boss to finish off the dungeon, which is why I did the stat load for it. Like, the easiest way to put it is that it's just kind of another basic boss you fought in the past, and you really shouldn't be threatened by it. The hardest thing is pronouncing its name, really. The only hazard, as you just saw there, is the fact it has an AoE. You can block it, but if you can get high enough, you can jump over it, but I jumped a tad too late and so fell too close to the ground when the attack went off. And its physical attacks, well, they do kind of hurt because it's like 4,000. That seems to have a tendency to happen when it does that. And bizarrely, despite clearly using a lot of electric attacks, it's neutral to electric, so if you use electric to it, you won't be reducing damage, despite the fact that it makes sense. And Aranea eventually gets the final blow and kills it. And if you head over here, the objective marker is bringing you to an item that is the mithril. It's just here. So there's the mithril ore. As soon as you get it, it'll offer you to leave, but I'm going to refrain, because if you pursue onwards, up the stairs, you'll find one of the safe dungeons. We have to wait for this dialogue to finish before it'll let us go up it, but yeah.
They're born from demons in a lab.
And just where Aranea confirms that the Magitech troopers that we've seen running around are demons, where they were demons that have been converted.
Kingly ass.
So I say no to returning to the entrance, and so we can head up. Worth mentioning, this safe, this vault dungeon up here, when I eventually find my way to it, is the 7th you're supposed to tackle of the 8. And so its level recommendation, I think, is level 95. So just take that as a warning when you get to post game, and if you start tackling them all, that one's a really fucking high leveled one. But I cut to getting out of here because, you know, those load screens can go to hell. I think that's one of the things that does put a smile on my face, like Thanos style, is being able to snap my fingers and get rid of these damn load screens.
Training. Still got a hard path ahead.
Because the load screens in this game are very obnoxiously long. Thankfully you don't have to put up with them all the time, but they are long. But that's the last of Arenea's help. But now, after this, I don't get to show it in the game because I don't go out hunting during the night. But if you go out exploring during the night, there is a chance that Arenea's ship will land with you and she will help you for that fight alone and then bugger off after the fight. When the game first launched, there was a glitch where if you went to camp after fighting in a certain area and then immediately rested, Arenea would be locked into your team and remain there up until you fight the final boss. So literally anything else in the game you could go do, as long as it wasn't fighting the final boss. And as we're told, Cindy has a friend in Lestalem that will help us with the Mithril, so our next destination is Lestalem.
Shame to say goodbye to such a nice fishing spot.
We're not going fishing. We're not going fishing. Give it up, Prompto. What? Stop trying to convince Nox. He's very easily convinced. There's an objective marker very nearby over here, which is really handy because it's Arenea. If you go and talk to it, it's Arenea will give you a lift straight back to Lestalem and save the hassle of driving over there.
You're headed to Lestalem, right? I'll take you there, but no further.
See?
So, ready to ship out?
Yes, we are. It says won't be able to continue for some time, but if you the thing we're going to by doing this side quest, like this, I say side quest, it's a main thing we have to do, but it's a side story essentially because it's what we're doing whilst we're waiting for the Mithril to be put into the ship to make it all work the way it needs to work. That's the easiest way to put it. It's just something small on the side to do. As we finish chapter 7, and Gladio's left behind because he wasn't with us for the whole chapter. Don't worry, he catches up. He does get all the experience despite not being in any of the fights. It won't get tallied up until he's back in the team, so don't worry about it. But yeah, we've got a side thing to do, and then we'll be heading off to Cape Cairn. Obviously, but it's only a small thing, so the fact that they make a point of saying, oh, you're not going to have much time to do it afterwards, it's kind of funny. Because it's like, it's like a 5-minute distraction. It's just like doing any quest. I don't know why they had to make a point of saying you won't be able to continue for a while. After this one though, you need to start doing all the side stuff you want to do before advancing in the main plot. I'm going to make that warning now. Because chapter 9 is when you're locked into the plot and will remain there until you finish the main game. Yeah, we're getting close. And chapter 8 in its entirety is the bits and bobs we're about to do in Lestalem, and then driving down the Cape Cairn to hop on the boat, and that's the end of the chapter. So after we do this little bit here in Lestalem, after that, make it a priority that any side thing you wanted to do in the main thing but just decided to postpone till later, do it. So after this part we'll be doing mostly optional extra things up until we decide to go to Cape Cairn. Also, there's a slight issue in the factory, so this is the side thing that we're doing quickly, that there's an issue in the factory, so we have to go sort it out because there's demons in there, so we have to dress out in like a thermal reactor safety suit, a thing like it is, and head over there. But we were informed another hunter, well, about to get informed that another hunter is ahead of us.
Offering to clear out those demons. That'll give me time to treat this mithril for you. There's a hunter who went in right ahead of you.
Take a wild guess who it is. You don't need to see him. You don't need to hear him. You already know who he is. I don't think that was a surprise or a twist or anything to anyone. The moment they said, oh, Hunter went up ahead, you already are like, alright, I know who that is. I know who's coming back to the party today.
So be quick.
Like, seriously, it's so painfully obvious that we're going to head over there. It's like, it's someone significantly taller than us, a bit broader. And that voice seems awfully gladiolusly. they try and play it along like Hunter joins your team, but it's so fucking obvious. And you can't, the only thing that would have made it better is if you go into his equipment and he has all Gladdy's equipment. But after this section, it'll make plot sense for us to equip Gladio's episode-specific weapon, the Genji Blade, which we will be doing after I do episode Gladio, which will be the very next part. But all you gotta do is clear out the enemies. There is a slight time limit, but I've never failed the time limit to see what happens if you fail it, so don't worry about it. But this does actually lead me, whilst we're doing this and circling around, it does certainly lead me to a criticism of Gladiolus' character. That I feel like of all the bros on the road, he gets the least amount of development. Like the most effort he gets is episode Gladiolus, but it's something that ultimately doesn't matter as much as I felt like it should have. Like I feel like they could have done a lot more like with Gladiolus in the plot, but it feels like he's just there to be a tool for Noxus's development, whilst Ignis has his own development through this game that we'll see start to fall through as we go through, and Prompto has its own development that once again we'll start seeing the pieces of as we go through. But Gladiolus, I just feel, doesn't have it. I feel like he was the one extra to sort of just be a driver for Noctis's development, which we've already seen back when we was fighting the Titan and he grabbed him and sort of had a few choice words with Noxus to get him to get his act together. God, we got knocked a mile there, and there's the time limit at the top there. So I've never failed it, so I don't know what happens if you do, or whether it doesn't actually matter and it's optional, but just get a move on, and all these enemies are weak basic things anyway, so you shouldn't have too much trouble. Apart from this guy who has a lot of health for some reason.
Hey, big guy! I'm on it.
Look, there's even Tempest, and he even goes, hey big guy, like he knows, it's not... It's so like I want to pretend Square Enix were just having a laugh and saying, yeah, look, everyone's gonna know, but we'll just play it along for a laugh. Like I want to believe that's what Square Enix are doing, but I don't know with those guys sometimes. Like some of the plot twists they tried to sell us as plot twists in some of the older Final Fantasy games tell me that they don't always think their twists are as big as they think they are.
When have I ever? Keep it up. Will do. Now, let's scram.
I think the last time with like a proper twist, like before 15, that got me was the ending of 13-2, because I felt like it was well built up. You could see it coming, but it was one of those things that because it was something that you could see it coming, but it was so goddamn dark. You was like, yeah, there's going to be something that'll stop that. There's going to be some lucky twist at the end, but then it doesn't, and it just plays out like that. And the true ending of the game is that dark thing just happens anyway, and you're like, oh.
Here's your mithril. And
So I'll give it kudos for 13-2, but then I hold a lot of bias for 13-2. But yeah, there's the reveal. By the way, oh look, it's Gladio. And you might notice he's gained a new scar straight across his forehead. He used to only have one scar going down through his eye, but no, he has a second one following his forehead.
And better than ever.
But thankfully, Gladiolus will be slightly more confident than what he is. He has had like the limit of his development because this point is based after episode Gladiolus in terms of chronological of the story, but there is a way to make it make sense, which is why I'm still continuing, because episode Gladiolus is told from a camp. It's them asking, so Gladio, what did you actually do? And it's during a campfire, so you're going to see us, instead of going straight to the boat to Cape Cayam to continue the plot, the very next thing we do, I went to cut to the car because I wanted to cut to a camp to wrap up the part, but as we go there, Gladio stops me for cup noodles. The fucker. But the next thing we're doing is heading to a camp, so then when we start the next part it will make sense because it will start with Gladio asking, well, the team asking what did he actually do, and then him explaining from a campfire, and then the next two parts after that are the last two Royal Tomb dungeons, so it'll be the one up by the Vesper Pool and it will be the Costelmark Tower. Costelmark Tower is like 56 minutes. Like I've edited down the raw footage and it's still barely under an hour, and it's like, oh, for God's sake. Like, it's gonna be the longest part in the Let's Play, I feel. The only other time it might end up being longer is that there's a dungeon exclusive to the post game that's infamous because it's a puzzle based dungeon. It's nothing but puzzle solving, and it's painfully long. It's stupidly long. That one I can see being split into multiple parts, but I cut along until the closest campfire along the way, which happens to be by the Merlwood, or the Murmurwood, or whatever it's pronounced. or called Tegley Haven or Telgi Haven here. So then I camp here, so then when we start the next part, we're camping here, and it makes sense for when this explains episode Gladiolus. And also Chocobro's gone home again. So we were just here near the Myrtle Pool. The whatever. So we're gonna have some snacks and camp here. Even though we camp in the rain, it makes enough sense. It makes enough sense for the plot, and also Gladio's gonna get his catch up. But that all being said, next time on Final Fantasy 15, we'll be making a head start and doing episode Gladiolus, the first of the DLC episodes released post-launch for the game. But until then, you guys take care now.